I grew up in a small town in the middle of the United States, the kind where everybody knows each other. My parents fought all the time. It wasn't an occasional thing, like a disagreement here and there. It was daily, sometimes early in the morning, while the coffee was still cooling on the table. Other times at night, when I was already in bed, trying to sleep with my pillow pressed over my ears. The arguments always started over something stupid. Food, money, a forgotten bill, a careless comment. And then they grew. They grew way too fast. There was never any direct physical aggression. No slaps, no punches, no objects flying in my direction. But the words hit like punches. My mother said she had lost her own life inside that marriage. My father snapped back that she was never satisfied with anything. My mother spent most of her time on the couch. The TV stayed on all day, volume loud, shows she didn't even seem to actually watch. Sometimes I came home from school and she didn't even turn her head to see if I was okay. When they finally announced the divorce, I was around 6 years old. It was during dinner. The two of them sitting at the table, tense, like they were about to give some kind of terrible hospital news. I didn't cry. I just felt relief. In the end, the decision was that I would stay with my father. My mother wasn't in any condition to take care of me. I remember holding my father's hand tightly the day they said that. My father and I moved to a simple apartment on the outskirts of Pittsburgh. I had to catch the school bus every morning because the new area was too far to walk, and my father stayed with me until it arrived. He kept looking at me. Deep down, he was afraid of failing as a father, afraid of repeating everything he had lived through with my mother. Life in that apartment followed an almost automatic routine. My father would say, repeat, insist that living there was temporary. The place was awful. It was all he could afford. We'll get out of here, I promise. I just need to work a little more. He took extra shifts, and sometimes I was already in pajamas when he walked through the door. A year passed, and my father kept his promise. We moved to a better neighborhood. My father seemed like a renewed man. He made plans out loud, talked about the future, said that now things would finally fall into place. And for a while, they really did. It was during that period, that almost beautiful phase of our life, that she appeared, polite, gentle, always smiling, and with 2 dogs that quickly became my late afternoon distraction. What I didn't know, couldn't have known, was that this woman would bring back a different version of the chaos I thought I had left behind. She entered our life slowly, first as a neighbor, then as a frequent visitor. She showed up in the late afternoon with the 2 dogs pulling their leashes, and I ran to play with them on the lawn. Meanwhile, she stood talking to my father by the fence, laughing at everything he said as if all of it were extremely interesting. I watched from a distance, sitting on the ground with the dogs lying across my legs. In the beginning, she barely spoke to me. She only smiled, asked how school was, complimented my grades. I didn't say much back. Over time, she started sleeping over. First occasionally, then more often. Toothbrushes showed up in the bathroom. Her clothes began to take up space in the closet, and along with that, small comments started to appear. Nothing blatant, just stray sentences, almost innocent. Don't you think you watch too much TV? When I was your age, I helped around the house way more than this. She said it in a light tone, but always looking at me the same way, as if I were some unfinished project that needed adjustments. One night after dinner, I sat on the couch to watch a cartoon. I had finished my homework, helped my father put some things away, and I was tired. She walked into the living room, stood there for a few seconds, and said, "Why aren't you washing the dishes?" I looked at my father, waiting for him to say it was fine. He just answered that we'd take care of it later. She smiled, but it was a strange smile. If I left a cup in the sink, she had something to say. If I took a little too long in the shower, there came another remark. I was only 8 years old, but inside me I carried that old feeling already, as if I were constantly being evaluated. Even so, nothing was absurd enough yet for my father to notice. To him, all of that still looked normal. Her demands began to increase slowly but steadily. Now it wasn't enough for me to wash my own plate. I had to wash everything. It wasn't enough to clean my room. I had to clean it her way. And she always had that overly calm tone, as if she were just teaching, as if any discomfort I felt was just me being dramatic. My father tried to keep the balance. Sometimes he defended me. He said it was all a matter of adjustment, that every home needed rules, that I had to learn to be more responsible. The arguments between them started revolving around me. I was the messy one, the difficult child. The first time she talked about my room, I thought I had misunderstood her. She stood in the doorway, looking inside as if she were evaluating a house before buying it. She looked at my things, my bed, the drawings taped to the wall. Then, With the most natural tone in the world, she said the space was too big for a child alone, that the dogs needed a better place to sleep, that I could very well adjust to another space. When she pointed to the small storage space under the stairs, I laughed. I laughed because it seemed like a bad joke. That place was dark, stuffy. It wasn't a bedroom. It was a hole. My father was shocked. He tried to argue, told her it was ridiculous, that it was my room, that the dogs could stay in the living room, in the yard, even in their room. She crossed her arms, her face hard, and started talking about how she had always given an entire room to her animals, how important that was to her, how I needed to learn to share. I started crying right there. My father and she argued loudly. She threatened to leave. My father didn't give in right away. For the first time, he truly stood his ground. The agreement came later. A little house would be built in the yard for the dogs. She accepted, but nothing went back to normal after that. From that day on, she began treating me like someone who had won a dirty fight against her. She stopped letting me touch the dogs. If they came near me, she pulled their leashes away. It was also around that time she quit her job. She just stopped leaving in the mornings. Now she was always there, watching, waiting, ready to find something to criticize. She started asking questions that embarrassed me without me even understanding why. She asked why my mother never called me, why my mother didn't want me, if I had done something to make her leave. I didn't know how to answer, and she seemed to enjoy that. I began spending more time out of the house. I stayed at friends' places, in neighbors' yards, in the school library. She announced her pregnancy like someone announcing a victory. My father called me into the living room, wearing that tense smile he used when he desperately wanted things to go right. She sat next to him, hands clasped over a stomach that was still completely flat. She said, with a rehearsed tone, that I was going to have a little brother. I didn't say anything. My father seemed emotional. He talked about the baby as if it were a fresh start, a chance to do everything differently. The wedding came too fast. One day she was the woman who slept some nights at our house. The next, she was officially my father's wife. A simple ceremony, very few people. During the pregnancy, she became even more demanding. Everything bothered her. And my father. My father started walking on eggshells around her, always trying to avoid stress, always trying to avoid conflict, always trying to keep her happy. When I saw my brother for the first time, something inside me changed instantly. I didn't know it yet, but I had just created the strongest bond of my entire life. Motherhood didn't change her. If anything, she became more impatient, sharper. My father spent entire nights awake when the baby had colic. He slept poorly, went to work exhausted, and when I got home from school, many times she simply placed the baby in my arms and told me to take care of him while she rested for a bit. That bit became hours. I was 12, 13 years old, and I already felt old. Update 1. The idea of college started almost like a forbidden thought. Something like, what if I could leave? At school, a teacher called me after class and asked if I had ever thought about applying to a university. I laughed nervously. I told her that wasn't for people like me. She said I had potential, that my grades were high, that I couldn't waste that. That night, I couldn't sleep. I spent months gathering information in secret. I researched on the library computer, hid pamphlets inside books, thought about cities I had never seen, about dorm rooms I would probably never set foot in, about a life where I wouldn't need permission for anything. At the same time, I felt like a traitor. When I finally gathered the courage to talk to my father, he listened in silence. He said I deserved to try. But right after that, and your brother? I didn't know how to answer. The conversation with her was worse. She laughed, said I was being ungrateful, that I didn't think about the family, that I was abandoning my responsibilities, that college was a luxury, that I should look for something close to home, something that wouldn't interfere with their routine, something that wouldn't throw everything out of order. I told her I had already applied anyway. It was the first time I saw her completely lose control right in front of me. She screamed, said I was destroying everything, that I was just like my mother, that I was running away like a coward. And still, I went. The day I packed my things felt strange. My father tried to act normal, helped me carry my bags to the car, told me to call often. She didn't help me, didn't hug me, just stood in the doorway with her arms crossed, watching as if she were finally getting rid of something unwanted. I walked into the university dorm, a small room shared with a stranger who would soon become part of my routine. I called often at first, talked to my father, asked about my brother, avoided talking to her. Little by little, the calls started happening less often. The call came on an ordinary afternoon when my phone began vibrating nonstop. I looked at the screen. My father's name repeated again and again. When I held the phone to my ear, it took me a few seconds to recognize his voice. He spoke softly, said my name. Then he said it directly without any preparation, that he had cancer, stomach cancer. Then came the second call. This time he was already crying. He said she had left, that she had packed her things, that she said she couldn't handle it, that she didn't want to take care of a dying man. He also said she had left my brother, alone with him. I threw everything inside a backpack, clothes, charger, documents, caught a bus in the middle of the night. When I got to the house, the place looked abandoned, things out of place, drawers open, dirty dishes piled up. My father was sitting on the couch, and my brother was on the floor with some toys scattered around him. He ran when he saw me, hugged my legs tightly. For the first time in years, I felt real hatred, a hot, filthy kind of hatred. She had just walked away. In the days that followed, I started going with my father to his exams, hospitals, cold rooms, people using terms I didn't fully understand. He tried to be strong in front of me, said he would fight, that he had seen worse situations end well, but I saw the fear in his eyes. She didn't call. I called. Many times. Her phone, her parents' house, any number I still had. No one answered. Sometimes I even thought maybe it was all a mistake. Maybe she was just distant. Maybe she would appear soon with some excuse. But the days went by, and nothing. My father started chemotherapy. He grew weak, nauseous, slept too much. Some nights he stayed awake trembling in pain. And I was there, for everything. Sometimes he asked about her. I lied, said she was dealing with things, that she'd be back later. After a few weeks, the doctors said my father needed to be admitted to a specialized facility, 24-hour monitoring, constant observation. I signed papers with trembling hands, and then came the part I had feared the most since that afternoon call. I couldn't bring my brother with me to that place, and deep down, I already knew who I would have to look for. When I knocked on her parents' door with my brother's hand in mine, my patience was gone. I didn't ask permission. I wasn't polite. I just said, almost yelling, that my father was hospitalized, that their daughter had abandoned everything, and that I had no other choice. They looked at me like I had dragged something filthy into their living room. They said he was already used to me, that I had always taken better care of him than she had, as if that were some kind of compliment. I said my father was in a treatment center, said I would be returning to college, said that if they didn't keep him, I would call social services. When I walked out of that house, I felt like I was leaving a part of myself behind. In the mornings, I woke up in my dorm room as if I hadn't slept at all, caught the early bus and went straight to the treatment center where my father had been admitted. He stayed in a small room with a narrow window facing a parking lot. Too thin, too weak, skin without color, voice barely there. Even so, whenever he saw me walk in, he tried to smile. Asked about college like it was the most important thing in the world. There were days when he barely spoke, just stared into nothing. At night, I made the trip back, went to her parents' house to see my brother. His grandparents handled the basics, but everything was mechanical. Food, bath, clothes. There was no real affection. I tried contacting her, called, sent messages. Sometimes I just stared at the screen like an idiot, waiting for the typing dots to appear. They never did. With her parents, replies were short, full of hollow excuses. They said she wasn't well, that she needed space, that it was a difficult phase. I studied whenever I could. My grades started slipping. My professors began asking if everything was okay. I said yes, lied easily. It was easier to lie than to explain that whole mess. At night, when I finally lay down, my mind wouldn't shut off. I kept thinking about my father alone in that hospital room, about my brother sleeping in a house where he wasn't truly wanted, about myself, trying to be two people at once. Then came a day when my father suddenly worsened. A high fever. He said things that didn't make sense. I rushed to the hospital and found nurses going in and out of his room. I stood frozen in the hallway, trying not to fall apart. Hours later, a doctor came to talk to me, explained that the condition was advancing, that they would do what they could, that I had to prepare for rapid changes. My father returned to the room, even weaker. The call from the hospital came at dawn. I answered on the first ring, heart already racing, like my body knew before my mind did. The voice on the other end was too careful, said my full name, asked me to sit down. I sat on the edge of the bed with shaking legs. When the word passed came out of the nurse's mouth, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, silent, staring at the wall, feeling like something had been ripped out of me with brutal force. My father died while he slept. I repeated that sentence in my head several times, while he slept, as if that made it hurt less. I remember thinking at some point during the trip back that I still hadn't told my brother, and that terrified me. The house was full when I arrived, people speaking too softly, awkward hugs. Her parents were there. She wasn't. When I saw my brother, he ran toward me like he always did. He asked about our father. I couldn't answer at first. The word got stuck in my throat. When I finally managed to say that our father had become a star in the sky, he went quiet. He didn't cry. He just hugged me even tighter. People said he was a good man, hardworking, honorable. My brother stayed by my side the entire time. At some point, his grandparents called me into another room. I already knew, even before they opened their mouths, that the conversation wouldn't be about grief. They said their daughter had left for good, that she was confused, that she didn't know what she wanted, that she didn't want to take on the role of a mother. Then came the sentence that hit me like a punch. You're all this boy has now. They talked about their age, their health, their difficulties, said they couldn't raise him full-time, said I had cared for him for so long that it would be more natural that way. I felt anger, an ugly kind of anger. I had just lost my father, and still, they were trying to put the entire weight of another life on my shoulders. I said I couldn't, that I didn't have the structure, that I didn't have the money, that I was in college, that I needed to study. I said all of that, but I thought, if I say no, he'll be abandoned again. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the living room floor with my brother asleep on the couch beside me. I kept thinking, I can't take this anymore. Then I thought, I can't do that to him. The next morning, I went back to his grandparents and said I would take him. On the day I lost my father, I also gained a child I never asked for, and that changed everything. In the days following the funeral, I lived in a strange state, as if I were watching my own life from the outside. My father had left everything in my name. That included the house where he lived with her, the car, and a lot of money. It was his entire life savings, meant for his retirement. Selling the house was easier than I expected. I chose a college town a few hours away, big enough that no one would know us. We found a small apartment with 2 tiny bedrooms near campus. He chose the room with the window facing the trees. I let him. I wanted him to have, for the first time, a choice that belonged only to him. Our routine started little by little. In the morning, I took my brother to school. Then I rushed to my classes. In the afternoon, I picked him up, helped with homework, made simple dinners. When the judge finally confirmed that I would be my brother's legal guardian, I felt a mix of pride, fear, and responsibility. It was official. Now I was everything he had. Life began settling into a rhythm I never imagined possible. And it was exactly when I finally took a deep breath, for the first time in a long while, that something in the past stirred again. Something I thought, or desperately wanted to believe, had been left behind. Update 2. The first call came on a morning that was far too ordinary. I was in the kitchen trying to convince my brother to eat before school when the phone started vibrating. An unknown number. I ignored it. We were always getting calls from banks, ads, scams. I didn't think twice. The phone rang again in the middle of the afternoon, and then at night, 3 times in a single day. Something inside me started to feel uneasy. The next day, 2 more calls. On the 3rd one, I answered. And then came the voice I would recognize anywhere in the world. She said my full name. A cold shiver went down my spine. She asked how he was. She said my brother's name as if she had just left his side. I didn't answer right away. My silence seemed to irritate her. Then she changed her tone, sounding defensive, said she had gone through a hard phase, that it hadn't been easy to leave him, that I needed to understand. I only said that he was fine, that he was in school, that he had friends, that he was safe. She took a deep breath on the other end. She asked to talk to him. I said no. From that point on, the calls became frequent, sometimes twice in the same day, sometimes long messages that took me hours to gather the courage to read. In one, she said she regretted everything. In another, that I was keeping her son away from her. In another, that she just wanted to see him, even for a few minutes. In another, that I had no right to keep him from her. Each message came with a different version of her. Regretful, indignant, threatening. My brother began to notice something was wrong. One night, while I was making dinner, he asked if his mother had called. I told him the truth in the safest way I could, that she was trying to reach us, but things were still confusing. I started living with a familiar tension, that old feeling that something bad was coming, but you didn't know when or how. She began making demands, first to talk to him, then to visit, then to know exactly where we lived. I stood firm, Said any contact would have to be decided carefully, with legal support, that he wasn't an object she could pick up whenever it was convenient. She laughed over the phone, said I was acting like I was too important, that I wasn't his real mother, that the courts could still change things. That thought stayed stuck in my mind for days. Part of me screamed that I was doing the right thing. Another part, smaller but persistent, whispered that maybe I was taking something from him. Even knowing everything she had done, the word mother still carried a weight I couldn't entirely ignore. Hatred came mixed with doubt. The calls grew more aggressive, the messages sharper. One night she wrote that I was living off my father's money, that I had sold things that weren't only mine, that part of it belonged to her by right. That's when I understood it wasn't just about the child anymore. It was about control, about money. She showed up one afternoon when I wasn't home. I had picked up my brother early from school because he had a stomachache. On the way back, we stopped at the pharmacy. That's when my phone began vibrating nonstop. Messages from her, almost back to back, typed in a rush with spelling errors. I'm here. I'm knocking on the door. I want to see my son. I dropped everything, grabbed my brother's hand, and ran out of the pharmacy. When I finally reached the building, I asked him to stay at a neighbor kid's apartment next door. He didn't want to. He cried. He walked away crying softly, looking back again and again. When I stood alone in front of her, she started talking before I even got close enough, asked where he was, said she had come to get what was hers. I asked if she was talking about the child or the money. She didn't like that question. Her expression changed. She said I was acting too smart, that I had taken advantage of my father's death, that I had stolen an inheritance that wasn't only mine. I told her she had abandoned everything when it mattered the most, and that had consequences. She began yelling, called my name loudly, said I was just like my mother, said I had lost my mind, said my father had gotten sick because of me. I called the police with a trembling hand, told them a woman was trying to take a child. She laughed when she realized what I was doing, said I was overreacting. The officers arrived quickly. When they came down the hallway, she started changing her story, turned herself into the victim, said she just wanted to see her son, that I was preventing her. I showed the guardianship documents. The officers spoke with her separately. One of them told her firmly that she needed to step away and that there could be legal consequences if she continued. They took her out of there. That night, my brother slept with me. She came back a few days later. This time, my brother wasn't home. When I heard the heavy knocks on the door, I already knew who it was. I opened it just enough to see her. Her eyes had nothing remorseful in them, only anger. She went straight to the point. She wanted money, said I had sold my father's house, said she had a right to a portion of it, said I had to pay her. I told her she had walked away from that marriage when my father was dying, that she had left her own child, that there was nothing there for her except the consequences of her choices. That was when she crossed a line. She said my father had gotten really sick because he had to support me, said I had been an ungrateful daughter. Something inside me snapped. My hand hit her face before I even realized it was raised. The sound of the slap echoed in the hallway. I pushed her out with enough force to slam the door right after. My entire body trembled. I called a lawyer. It no longer mattered how much I wanted to avoid conflict. That had gone far beyond any limit. I asked for a restraining order. I gathered messages, calls, police records, everything. I didn't want her to have even the slightest chance of showing up at my door again. The restraining order came a few weeks after the incident. I felt strangely empty when I signed the last papers. There was no feeling of victory, just relief. Since then, she never showed up again, never called, never sent another message. The idea that she might show up someday has never fully disappeared. Maybe it never will. Today, when I look at my brother sleeping in the room next to mine, I think about how family, I learned, isn't about who stays out of obligation. It's about who chooses to stay when they could have walked away. And I stayed.